Hi there, this is Marlene Dinarius here, and I'm at this little old reed organ, which is a little bit of a creaky machine. And we're going to be looking at, or talking about, classical improvisation. So I've been reading an enormous amount of stuff, mainly books written in the 1700s, 1800s, and they all boil down to the same thing. To begin to learn how to improvise classical music, you need to master the thorough bass, but mastering the thorough bass not in the sense of being able to decode the numbers on a score and play those chords, because that's pretty useless nowadays, but rather master it in a more internal way, where you just know the chords and your hands know the chords, and it doesn't really matter if you know the numbers or not. This is not so important. You need the numbers basically to learn them at the beginning, because that's how the chords are denoted. There is something called the common chord. Now, the common chord and mastering it is extremely important. Before you can master it, you have to learn all your scales. And then you have to play the common chord in each scale and learn the common chord in each scale. And then you have to learn the forms of the common chord. So here's the common chord of C. So Fa, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, Fa, Mi, Sol, Fa, Mi, Sol. Or we start with Fa up here, Fa, Mi, Sol, Fa, Mi, Sol. Or we can play Fa, Mi, Sol, Fa, Mi, Sol. So these are the three positions of the chord. And this Fa, Mi, Sol applies to any key. So remember, if you're using the solfeggio scale, which we're using here, Fa, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Sol, Fa, Mi, La, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re, Fa. So Fa, Mi, Sol, doesn't matter which note you start on, Fa, Mi, Sol will give you the common chord. And then you play the variations on it. Working your way through all the scales. Those are the scales with the sharps, and of course the scales with the flats. And so on. What modern theory would term the circle of fifths, but in the solfeggio it's just modulating from Fa to Mi and from Mi to Fa in the different scales. So that's the first thing you need to do, and that will take some time. And to achieve full fluency, daily practice, probably for 2 or 3 years, until you really get fluent in all of the chords, in all of the keys, without having to think about them. Because improvisation, of course, only works if you don't think about it. It's like riding a bicycle at the beginning. You crash a lot because you're thinking about all the things that you're doing when you first get on a bicycle, when you're very small. What happens is that you just need to know it. So it becomes like driving, you don't think about it. The next exercise is related, and this is playing Fa, Sol, Fa. So you play the chord, the common chord of Fa, and then you play the common chord of Sol. Now play them in close position. So this is the common chord of G, Sol, Re, Ut, Fa, Mi, Sol, and the common chord of C, Sol, Fa, Ut, Fa, Mi, Sol, and then we need to bring them closer together. So what we do is this. For example, here we have C, and here we have G, and they're very close together. So instead of being one chord here and the next one up there, they're in the same space, so to speak. And we do that with all of the variations. And then you do that with every single key. So we start off with C, Sol, Fa, Ut, then G, and then we go through every single key, and we play Fa, Sol, Fa with the related chords. The next exercise is from Frederick Lamper's Thorobass, and it's the same thing, except that we play a holding note in the transition from one chord to the other. And the holding note is the note that's shared by the two chords. For example, here and here, we are sharing this note, Sol, which is Fa of the G and Sol of the C. So, and then we play it like this. And then you can play an arpeggio of sorts. Tiny improvisation just based around these two chords, the holding note and an arpeggio of each chord. So we're not doing anything very complicated. It's the equivalent of, in a language lesson, just the very first things in your language book, like see, John, see, look, there is a cat on the mat. So we are doing the musical equivalent of the cat sat on the mat. So once again, this is called playing the chords in close position. And in 19th century Roman numerals, this would be 1-5-1. In solfeggio, it's Fa, Sol, Fa. Fa, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, Fa, Mi, La, Sol, Fa, Sol, Fa, Fa, Sol, Fa, Fa, Sol, Fa, Fa, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, Fa, Sol, Fa, Sol, Fa, Fa, Sol, Fa, Fa, Sol, Fa. And then you can play the bass note. Fa here, Fa, Fa, fluency with the chord. Play it without the left hand. Trying to stay as relaxed as possible. And one thing that the thorough bass textbooks are quite emphatic about, and I found this mentioned in more than one. The first time I came across it was in Artemis Nixon Johnson's textbook on thorough bass, one of the latest books on thorough bass to be written. In fact, it's so recent, so to speak, that it uses Roman numerals to help, because at that point they had become fashionable. The earlier books, for example, Frederick Lampers, which I admire very much, was written before the Roman numeral system was invented. So, doesn't use Roman numerals, but they both say the same thing. When you are doing this, you must play the chords in the progression of the scales in what is now called the circle of fifths. So you start off with C, no flat, no sharps. Then you add one sharp, G, then you add two sharps, then you add three sharps, then you add four sharps, then you add five sharps, then you add six. And the same thing with flats. One flat, two flats, three flats, four flats, five flats, so on. A little trick, if you are looking at the stave and you have a key signature and it's got a sharp, well, the key note will be one note above the last sharp. That helps. And with the flats, there's a mnemonic. F, then the word bead, and then GC. So F, B, G, C. And that will give you the progression of the flats. F, B, E, A, D, G, and then C. So that's it. And C flat, of course, is the same thing as B natural. I think that's it. So, knowing what you need to know is not complicated, but just like knowing how to ride a bicycle is not particularly complicated, but mastering it is. Unless you master this, and all of the textbooks on thorough bass are very clear, absolute mastery of this is required. I don't yet have it. I'm working on it constantly, and hopefully I will get there. But this was the way musicians were taught. Pretty much all musicians were taught. It wasn't just about being able to read the music off the sheet, but also commanding the keyboard and having the psychological knowledge of the keyboard as well, which of course makes you far more relaxed when you're playing sheet music, because you know what to do if you mess up. You can just cover for yourself with your knowledge of harmony, or you could change things. And of course the expectation was that things would be changed. No one would just play the same boring piece over and over again. There would be constant variation, extemporization, what is now called improvisation. And I think that given the way the world is going with artificial intelligence and so on and so forth, that this kind of human interaction with music is going to acquire far greater importance than simply reading a score and interpreting it and playing it. And also, as Coleman says, if you can do that, if you can take a score and you can play beautifully from a score, but that's all you can do, but you cannot even play the simplest piece out of your head as a fantasy or as some kind of imagination work, then you are like somebody who has been trained to recite French poetry beautifully, but could not so much as ask for a coffee in a cafe in French. So there's a language of music, and students were expected to know this language. Somewhere along the line, this stopped. Improvisation was an important part of playing, composing, and I think it's extremely interesting. It makes music much more interesting. It's more challenging, of course, but it's no longer just this technical, dry technical thing of mastering the score and playing what someone else wrote, but giving you the command and ability to play what you want to play from your own head. So this is the element of thorough bass, the very, very basic first thing. Learn your scales, learn the common chords, learn the variations, and then learn how to connect the chords from fa to sol with a holding note in every single key, major and minor. 3 variations for each chord. That's it. That's what you need to know for the very, very beginning. Bye.